3 hours to eat, that was the bit I was actually worried about when I started time-restricted eating. Not the hunger, my gut. Everything I'd read said variety needs grazing, 6 meals a day, snacking through it, feeding the microbiome little and often. A 4-hour window felt like the opposite of that. 13 years of tracking my own data, one person properly logged, and during the 70-day rhythm reset, I counted every single plant that I ate. What I found inside that short window surprised me. And it's not what most fasting advice would predict. The day I hit 30 different plants in 3 hours flat, why a tight window might actually force better choices, not worse ones. And the garden analogy that changed how I think about feeding my gut at all. So where did I even get the 30 plant idea from in the first place? Not from a leaflet, it was from listening to Stim Spector and the Zoe lot over about a year and a half of hearing it on the podcast while doing something else entirely. I'll be honest, it wasn't always making sense to me. Diversity matters more than any single food. 30 different plant types a week, that's the number that they kept coming back to. Herb count, spices count. It's not a restriction thing, it's an addition thing. So actually I believed it, properly believed it. What I also believed, without ever really questioning it, was that hitting a number like that meant eating constantly, little and often. Beneficial gut bacteria need constant feeding throughout the day, was roughly the shape of it in my head. Snack here, add a bit of veg there, graze your way, buy 30 plants by bedtime. Then I started tightening my eating window. 3-4 hours a day, sometimes less. And two ideas just didn't sit together. Can intermittent fasting cause bloating or wreck the diversity that I'd spent a year building? And that was the actual question that I had in my own head. There's a gut doctor called Will Bulswick, wrote Fibre Fueled, does a lot of work with Zoe, and he went through the American Gut Project data, the biggest citizen science microbiome study there's ever been, and found people eating 30 plus different plant types a week had significantly more diverse microbiomes than people eating 10 or fewer. Didn't matter what diet label you used, vegan, carnivore, whatever. The number mattered, not the eating pattern wrapped around it, which is a different claim to the one I'd been carrying around in my head. What I hadn't done, not once, was try to hit that number inside a short window. I assumed it wouldn't work. So when I started the 70-day rhythm reset in October last year, it was a general bit that thought I'd have to sacrifice. 13th of October started. Windows were anywhere from 3 to 6 hours, sometimes less, depending on the day. But 2 months later, day 66 of the reset, a letter landed from the surgery, confirming the usual bloods. Optimal, it said. 20 months off everything now, officially off the risk list. Not because of the plant counting specifically, I want to be honest about that, but it's the same window of change, and it told me nothing I was doing was working against me. And because I'm the sort of person who now tracks what he eats down to the herb, I started counting, properly counting, every single plant, every day, and logged it. Day 2, 26 different plants, 4-hour window. Day 3, 28 plants, same window length. Day 2, 26 different plants, 4-hour window. Day 3, 28 plants, same window length. Red pepper soup on its own, 9 plants in it. Pasta with tomato salsa, then a grapefruit afterwards. Day 7, 21 plants, mostly from a curry, herbs and spices, count. And once you start counting them, a curry becomes a proper plant diversity event. Day 22, 31 plants, 6.5 hour window. Day 26, 26 plants in 1 hour, 40 minutes. That was my tightest window of the event. Day 27, 38 plants, 4 hours. 38? That surprised me. And the day that stood out for me, day 45, 30 plants, 3-hour window. Going back through the log, the tighter the window, the more intentional the choices got. There wasn't room for filler. No point having plain toast in a 3-hour window when a mixed salad or a proper vegetable soup does more work in the same space. Tim Spector's Zoe team ran something called the Big If study. 37,000 people, a 10-hour eating window over 2 weeks, and found energy went up 22%, mood improved 11%, and hunger actually dropped rather than rising. It's a different mechanism to plant diversity, I know, but the same direction of travel. Compressing the window didn't seem to cost people something, it seemed to sharpen things. 13 years of NHS blood tests, the actual numbers, the GP conversations, what changed and what didn't. If you want to follow someone who documents this properly rather than just talks about it, that's what this channel is. Subscribe if that's useful to you. So what does my data actually suggest? And it is one person's data, properly logged, but still just me. It suggests the grazing bit was never the mechanism, variety was. And a compressed window, if anything, seemed to force better choices rather than limit them. No room for the filler foods that pad out a long eating day without adding anything. A nice way of picturing this, think of a well-tended garden in full bloom, hundreds of different plants, rich soil, everything supporting everything else. Barely room for a weed because every patch is doing something useful. That's a diverse gut. Now think of cracked council flower beds at the end of a dry August, a few tough weeds that will survive anything. Bare, compacted soil, nothing flowering. That's a depleted one. The difference isn't genetic destiny. It's what you've been feeding the ground for the last 10 years. And it turns out how long you spend at the flower bed each day matters less than what you actually plant while you're there. Now, when does the old advice still hold? If you've got a diagnosed digestive condition, IBS, IBD, or you're on a low FODMAP diet for a reason, ramping up fibre and plant variety quickly isn't something to do without your GP involved. But that's a genuinely different situation to mine. And if you're at the stage where your digestion just feels a bit off, nothing diagnosed, nothing urgent, this is worth knowing before the appointment rather than after it. What you're eating and how often you're eating might matter more than whether you're eating enough. Alessio Fanzo's work backs this up in a broader sense too. People in industrialised countries have somewhere between 15 and 30% fewer gut bacterial species than people in non-Western nations. And that loss lines up with the rising chronically inflammatory conditions, which is worth knowing before anyone hands you a diagnosis, not after. If you want somewhere to start, I've got a free plant diversity tracker link below, the same one I used, the link's in the description. And please remember, this is educational content, it's not medical advice. Speak to your GP before you change your fasting pattern, diet or any medication.